Welcome to the Excel Pod. Hello and welcome to the UNTIED Podcast, where we unravel the knots of life with faith, wisdom, and encouragement, because together we're here to untie from tradition and embrace truth through powerful Bible teaching. We are so glad that you have joined us today. I'm here with my good friend Corey, and we're bringing you another episode of the UNTIED Podcast. This is a week before Christmas. Everybody is excited for Christmas. You're probably doing your shopping, and so hopefully you're able to tune in with us between shopping at those different stores or whatever. But we just hope that everybody does have a very Merry Christmas as we approach this set of holidays coming up. Hope everybody stays warm and has a great time and safe travels wherever you are going. We're excited to come to you with another episode talking about the blessed man in the Psalms of David. And today we are in Psalm 59, and we are connecting this back, of course, to 1 Samuel 22. And so we're excited to talk about that. We've got a great show in store for you with just some random things that we love to talk about life and what's been cooking. We've got Bring Your Best Books today, and of course, our study together. So, Corey, let's get this thing rocking, man. What's been cooking?
Oh, not much. We're getting ready for what all goes on with Christmas time. So we've actually not been doing a whole lot. We had our Sunday school class had their Christmas party Sunday night, so I smoked. You never know how many people are going to show up for those things or how much food's going to be brought to those things. Yeah. So I always make way too much. But Gannon and I smoked about, I'm going to guess it was close to 140 chicken legs.
Nice.
They turned out very well. It took them a little longer than I thought it would because it was really cold on Sunday. If you were in too. West Tennessee, I'm not sure, Western Oklahoma, same, but anyway, very cold. So it took them a little longer than I anticipated that it would. But they weren't completely done when it was time to go back for services Sunday evening, and so I just left the smoker rolling while we went to church, which I don't really like doing, but I did. And we had a youth-led service, so I didn't even, I would normally not be thinking about what was going on at home because I'd be preaching, but I couldn't help but keep thinking, I wonder if the house is on fire right now or something, so... But anyway, as soon as we got done, and Gannon was one of we had two young men that preached. Gannon was one of them, and
I saw that.
And he did a really good job, in my very biased opinion. But anyway, I got home, and everybody was falling off the bone. They're really good, and I used a new rub that I'd never tried. I used to just make my own rubs, but I was in a hurry, so I bought rub at Walmart. It wasn't Meat Church. You would think it would be by the name, but when I saw the name, I had to get it. It was called Sweet Preacher, and I thought that if there was a rub that I should use, that would be, the one. So I did, and but anyway, we ended up with about half of them left over. So this week we've been trying out recipes that you use chicken leg meat on. We made one of our around here in the Mexican restaurants, chicken, cheese, and rice. Polo Loco is what they usually call it. Chicken, cheese, and rice is what it is. We've been making chicken, cheese, and rice. I made some Mexican rice out of some jasmine rice the other night, and I made some cheese dip, and then we cut off a bunch of that chicken meat off the bone, and the chicken, cheese, and rice is good at the Mexican restaurant, but they don't smoke their chicken, so it was even better because of that. So I told Gannon after it was done, I said, we should have put that cheese dip in a pan and put it on the smoker and got it a little smoky, and that would have even enhanced that, but I didn't take the time to do that. But anyway.
Well, I am looking at, I have never heard of Sweet Preacher, but I just looked it up here, made by Fire and Smoke. I know they've got some good stuff. Maybe they have a few different types, but this is the pork rub, and it has a picture of a pig with a top hat on. And it looks like, I don't know, two guns with honey coming out of them or something.
Yeah.
That is awesome. $6.99 is how much the old Sweet Preacher barbecue rub by Fire Smoke is. Probably need to check that out. So,
yeah. Well,
that's awesome.
It's a fitting name, if nothing else. So,
man, what a great situation we have run into here. That is awesome. They have different size jars. Nice. Get you an extra large. The extra large, doesn't really even show that it's. Oh, here we go. Let's see how much the extra large is. It's $9.49. That's still pretty good. I mean, really.
So. And most of those rubs have basically got the same. They got paprika. They've got if it's a sweet something, it's probably got brown sugar in it. It's got onion powder, garlic powder.
Yeah.
If it's a hotter thing, it's got pepper flakes or something. They generally have the same kind of stuff in them, which is why we've usually got all those things at home, and I just make my own. But I was just in a hurry, so I just grabbed a can of that. When I walked down that aisle with all the different spices and whatnot in the rub section, and I saw Sweet Preacher, and I said, well, that's the one. And so
it was meant to be. That's what it was.
Yes. Yeah. If we were Calvinistic, that's what we would think. So anyway.
Oh man. Yeah, that's great. Did I cooked 4 pork tenderloins on Sunday, smoked those. Ooh. And I have gotten hooked on, I can't remember if I said this, told you in person, or if we talked about it on here, but Kinder's seasoning, honey chipotle, and then they have their all-purpose salt, pepper, garlic, and put some honey Dijon mustard, covered it with that as a binder, put some of that salt, pepper, garlic on there, and then fairly good coating because pork can take it, and then put that Kinder's honey chipotle on there. Man, it is so good. $2.75 for an hour. It was more than done. It was more done than I wanted it to be. You can take that to 135, 137, and then take it off, wrap it, and it will cook to where it needs to be, and putting you right in the range that you want it, depending on how you like it, of course. But man, easy smoke. Got them at Sam's. You get 4 in a pack. Been eating on it all week. So, but yeah, Kinder's is another one. Honey chipotle, if you like that, that would be a great one to get. But I'm going to try this Sweet Preacher. If nothing else, at least have it in my cabinet.
Well, it was good. Yeah, if nothing else, just set it on top of your smoker box over there so that, like as a decoration, everybody knows the Sweet Preacher is what's running this thing.
Maybe we just need a sign. A sign that goes over the smoker. It says Sweet Preacher.
So if you're still looking for that last-minute Christmas gift for your favorite hosts, a hat,
you can send those
t-shirt.
To...
Yeah.
Corey, what's your address? Oh, and by the way, for those of you who may be Facebook friends with either one of us, or I don't know, you're just looking for what's going on in people's lives. I did see a picture of Corey's house that he posted with all of the Christmas lights. He's told me they're a little bit Griswoldy. I guess that's a word for Christmas. And I saw the picture, and my wife was sitting next to me. We were at a ball game, and I just laughed. I said, "Look at this." And she goes, "Whose house is that?" I said, "That's Corey's house." She goes, "Oh my."
Yeah. And this year it was almost exclusively done by Gannon this year because my shoulder and neck's been hurting so bad. I haven't been able to work at it much.
He did a good job, man. It is.
Well, he's had years of training under his belt. So
that's impressive.
But no, and the video, I need to send you a video because we've got it hooked up to a music box. So all the lights blink with the music and all that. And yeah, it's one of those things that we probably spend too much money and time on, but especially when the boys were little, it just kind of made it a little bit more magical. And now that they're older, I don't think they would let me quit doing it because it's become part of the tradition. And thankfully they look forward to it as much as I do. And it's an excuse for us to spend time together, which I'm always looking for. So,
well, there you go. You can't beat that. Well, it looks good. It looks good.
Well, thanks.
We went to in Oklahoma. There are really two. I know there's several more, but different parks and light displays that are out there. And so last Sunday we went down to Chickasha, Oklahoma, and checked out the Christmas lights. They have this huge tree. I mean, it's not a real tree, but it's one that they just string all the lights up. Looks like a tree. I don't know how tall the thing is, but it's massive. I don't know, 70 foot tall, 80 foot tall. I have no idea. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but had a good time there. Had a devotional before that and went out there and saw all the cool lights. And we'll probably go over to Yukon, Oklahoma, which has a really good light display there. And there's actually two different entries. There's two whole sides to this place. You can get out and walk around, or you can drive through it. Both of them had the, ice skating and all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty fun to watch that because nobody in Oklahoma really, truly knows how to ice skate. So, it's a good time. And just get your hot chocolate. Or my wife, we have to stop at Starbucks to get her drink before we can go do that. That's kind of her tradition. And, well, it's our tradition. I take her there and buy it for her, and she drinks it. That's the tradition.
Yeah.
And then we go look at Christmas lights.
We've got Discovery Park in nearby Union City. If you've ever watched the Is Genesis History movie, and Beyond Is Genesis History shows, part of that was recorded at Discovery Park in Union City. And they're showing, in that particular segment, they're talking about the different layers of strata. And there's a big thing. It's actually funny because since it's done here in rural Bible Belt area, in one room you're in, it's talking about millions of years ago. And then the next room you're in talks about religious history, and it has a life-size model of the Ark of the Covenant and different things like that. And there's just something for everyone there. But anyway, they do a big Christmas lights deal outside, and you can walk through it or whatever. But I make homemade hot chocolate every Christmas. That it will put you in a coma. You can't operate heavy machinery after you. There's nothing healthy about it. It's very rich, and it's very creamy, and it's very sweet, and it's very good. And
it's kind of like on the Santa Claus, the Santa Claus 2, when the toy Santa Claus downs that big old deal, and he's like,
I like hot chocolate.
I'm feeling great.
Well, in the first one, it's Judy that brings him that hot chocolate, and she's been perfecting it for, I think, 1,200 years or something like that. And shaken, not stirred, and anyway, mine stirred in a stir on the stove, but
I don't know that Judy would agree. Maybe she's a shaker.
Yeah, but I haven't been doing it 1,200 years, so who knows?
It takes time to perfect.
So we fill up the old Stanley thermos that's usually
There you go.
has coffee in it every day, and we take off and go do that. But anyway, fun times.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to maybe taking a day or two off to go do. I still haven't done my Christmas shopping. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I usually do that Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve, one of the two.
Well, I'm excited about Christmas and all that coming up, and we've got Christmas parties still Saturday here at the church building, and going to both our families that week, and so looking forward to all that. So, well, let's go ahead and dive into our second segment, which I have found very helpful for me. Hopefully, all of you who are tuning in to this have found helpful for you, and that's Bring Your Best Books. So let's go ahead and dive into that, and we'll try to show these on the screen here for those of you who are viewing this, and that way you can see the different links and stuff that you can buy these from, and of course we will post these in the show notes for you to check out. So, Corey, let's go ahead and start off with you so I can get all this brought up, and we'll go from there.
Well, I decided to go the commentary route today. I'm not a huge commentary guy, but I often get asked if I'm going to get a commentary, what should I look at? So, couple of suggestions that I have for you today. The first one is the Truth for Today commentaries. We may have done these before. If we have, I apologize. But the Truth for Today commentary is a set that's the red set you may have seen in your church library or whatever that has been being done the past, few years at least. Mm-hmm. And in my little pause, I've actually got the Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon, which was written by our brother and friend Denny Petrillo, and he's written a couple of these. I don't know all of the guys. They've got different authors for the different commentaries. I will tell you that the ones that Denny have written are, now I'm biased because he's my buddy, but they're the most exegetical commentaries you'll find on the market because Denny is Mr. Exegesis, so... but all the commentary, what I really like about the Truth Today commentaries is at the end of each chapter, they have an application section. And in these application sections, they take little sections of, or the entire chapter or a particular verse or whatever, and give you some application, practical application of it, which I love. And especially if I'm working on a Bible class or a sermon and I'm struggling with finding some ideas for application, that has helped me a lot. But they're members of the church. That doesn't mean that everything they say you'll agree with or whatever. But for that reason, they're a lot easier for me to recommend to others. The other commentary is the Word Biblical Commentary. They tend to look like this. They're different colors. But they've got this black striped in blue or green or whatever it might be. This is Romans 1-8, and you can see how thick it is. So there's lots of volumes to this particular set of commentaries, and as you can see on the screen there, they're not the cheapest set of commentaries, but in my opinion, they are some of the more exegetical commentaries that you'll find, which I appreciate. And, it's not lightweight stuff. They go pretty in depth on stuff and, with the Greek and all of that, but very, like I said, very exegetical for a commentary especially. And so I like... I've got all of the Truth for Todays that have come out. In fact, we just got Joshua in the mail the other day.
Yep.
I've got all of them that have come out. I've only gotten a couple of the Word commentaries that I found at a used bookstore or that has been left to. I've had a couple of different preachers that have left me their libraries over the years, and I've gotten a couple out of some of those. But the ones that I do have, like I said, I think are well done. But I'd say the Truth for Today is the one you want to go to for if you're studying, if you're writing a paper or wanting to really deep dive into something, the Word commentary would be the one to go to. So that's my two suggestions. It's not really two books, but two sets of books. But anyway, that's.
Well, this, I've got the Acts one, I think, which the one you showed. It's on sale for hardcover, $24.35. That's actually not bad.
That's not bad for them.
Truth for Today is $35. No, $26. I think a book, something like that. So
usually those Word ones are going to be what I have found. If you buy them new, you can see up there it says 67% off.
Yeah.
Usually they're somewhere between $30 and $50, depending on the volume. So,
and for this 2-volume set, $62. That's down from $89. So that's not bad. That's looks like Genesis. So
yeah.
Man, really.
But they're running lots of sales on Amazon right now, so it's a good time to buy some of that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, normally $89. Still.
But I will suggest, I don't know that anybody from our congregation really watches our podcast because they have to listen to me enough as it is. But if you're out there and you're thinking about what can I get for my preacher for Christmas, a big box of Chex Mix or whatever that is good, but we probably don't need the Chex Mix or the homemade cookies or whatever. But you might ask them, is there a particular book or set you're getting? But if you go back through all these Untied episodes, I think that's probably, most preachers would tell you that would be a good thing that you could do is help with this library. And particularly if like I'm, ask your preacher, what do you plan? You plan on preaching through a book next year or teaching through a book? And if they say, yeah, I'm going to preach through Hebrews next year, maybe consider buying him a volume of one of these commentaries of Hebrews or something of that nature. But
yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. Let me see. I'll, since we're going the commentary route, maybe I'll change slightly and do something very biased and just put ours in. We actually, let's see if they come up. There we go. Here we go. Since we're leading up to the Excelsior More Bible Workshop, why don't we throw this one in here? Also, if you're looking for a good exegetical book, application book, here's what you can do with it type of book. Our Excelsior More series is, I don't know, Corey, maybe I'll let you say what you feel these are, but we're very proud of this series, and we have actually, our 7th book, which is Romans 9 through 16, is fixing to go to print and will make its debut at the Excelsior More Bible Workshop in January, and then they will go up for sale right after that. And so we've got Romans, we've completed the set of Romans. We've gone through 1st and 2nd Peter, Jude, James, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. I'm sure I'm missing one, but these are you're able to buy a set at this point. So if you're looking to purchase it for your preacher or for your husband or for your son or for Bible students that are out there, these are really excellent books that you can check out that we are very hopeful that will be a great benefit and blessing to you. So you can look at any of those. And the second one that I have, I don't know if it's on here or not. Let's see if it is. I don't know. There it is. Boom. If you're looking for good devotional series types of books, This is a really good one. This is put out by the Jenkins Institute called His Word. They put this out back in 2017. There's actually several different ones that they have done. Not only is there the devotional book that's out there, but there's also a teaching book, a preaching book that goes along with it that you can do. Will help you teach through these if you're doing a Bible class or doing a sermon series or whatnot. And so this is written by various authors. And I'll just kind of go through here and just name a few of them. Chris McCurley, Michael Ross, Doug Burleson from Freed Hardeman, Bill Watkins. Corey, do you know Bill Watkins? Man, he's a great guy.
He probably don't know me, but I know him.
Kevin Langford, good buddy down at Louisville. Keith Parker. Who else? David Morris, Wayne Jones, Gant Carter, who's actually over here in Elk City, about 45 minutes from me, good friend of mine. Tommy Haynes, another one, Kirk Brothers, Neil Pollard, just a host of really good guys that have shared some really great thoughts. So here's a copy of it right here. Make sure and hop on and get you one of those for you or your congregation or whatnot. I think actually Jeff and Dale came out with a new one for this year. In fact, I know they did, but I can't remember what the name of it is this year. But, you can check that on the Jenkins Institute. What is it? The jenkinsinstitute.com, and they have all these on there too. So we will put all those on the show notes and everything for you, and hopefully they will bless you and help you in some way, shape, or form. Well, Corey, let's get into our main topic, our main study for today, which is going to be Psalm 59. That's where we're going to be. This is labeled as a prayer of deliverance from enemies on the subheading here, and lament psalm, a prayerful type of psalm. I think that you could fit probably a few things in here, but we're linking this back to 1 Samuel chapter 20, or 1 Samuel chapter 22 and verse 4. I think that's right. And I
think it's 19.
19 and verse 4. In fact, I've got it.
Yeah.
I've got it right here in my Bible marked. I don't know why I was thinking 22. But here's what 1 Samuel, man, I'm all over the place. 1 Samuel 19 and verse 4. Then Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, "Do not let the king sin against his servant David, since he has not sinned against you, and since his deeds have been very beneficial to you." So that's where we're connecting it back to, and
jump on down to verse 11. I think is really where it ties in.
Let's go down to verse 11. Let's see here. Then Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch him in order to put him to death in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, "If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be put to death."
And then you go on down, and we won't, but you can go on down through the next several verses, and you see how that happens, but how he does escape. God's going to use Michal to do it, but this is the prayer that he's praying, and then God uses Michal to answer his prayers to some degree.
Yeah.
But it is a lament psalm, and it's interesting because it's about this specific point in David's life, but it's almost written, parts of it at least, more as a communal lament song, meaning that it was used for a group use. So maybe it was all of his family and his men, or he just wrote this later on and he worded it to where it was something that everybody could use in worship or whatever. I don't know, but this is a what was it Snoopy used to write? It was a dark and gloomy night or something like that. Well, it's a dark and gloomy time in the kingdom and in David's life because it was a dark and gloomy time in the mind of Saul. And, God is going to deliver David from Saul. Of course, we've talked about before two main times that David is being pursued by someone is Saul, and then later on in life by Absalom, his son. But Saul has already in this chapter tried to throw a spear and run David through. That might have been the first warning sign that you probably ought to get out of Dodge, but he doesn't. He just goes home. And right. Saul sends some guys, as the title of the psalm tells you, that when Saul sent men to watch his house in order to kill him, Saul's keeping an eye. He's staking him out. We might say in a modern-day cop show, but not just to know where he's at or what he's up to, but his intent is to kill him. Mm-hmm. And yet David stays strong in his faith in God, and he turns to God in this dark time. And again, you can go to 1 Samuel 19, you can read about everything that's happening, but here's what David was thinking in this particular calm. There's a little bit of, we might say, an imprecatory part of it to some extent, like most of the laments have a little bit when dealing with enemies, but mostly it gets down to the point of his trust in God and how that even in these dark times, he doesn't use that as an excuse to run away from God when he's running away from Saul, but rather to draw him nearer to God. And he's maybe writing this later on in life, looking back at this time that God delivered him, and so praise and gratitude for what he's done for him.
Mm-hmm. Now, something to note here, obviously, if you have been tuning in with us and the different Psalms that we have looked at, we're reading a lot about the same stuff. It's about, deliverance. It's about trust, running from enemies, whether, like you said, it's from Saul, Absalom, the Philistines,
sin.
Whoever that might be. There's a lot of different things that are going on in the life of David, and so he's really having a time in his life, but he's praying different things over and over again within his life, and that's something that we need to really consider. That for some reason my camera's messing up, but we're gonna go ahead and continue on. I'll get it fixed here in a second, but. This shows, I think, in a few different ways that I've had people say, I don't know that I need to continue to pray about the same things, or am I bothering God with my prayers? Am I just sounding like I'm complaining or whatever that might be? And the reality is that no, you're not. And over and over again, we find David is right. He's writing these words, singing these songs. He's thinking about them. He's praying them over and over again because this is what's going on in his life, and I think that's what's important.
Yep, that's exactly. God doesn't mind. It's vain repetitions, but when you mean it, He's okay with you repeating it. And so anyway, the way that I ask, but I'm just telling you anyway, the way I would break this down is verses 1 through 5 is David needs deliverance. And he's telling God he needs him. And of course, you can see those first two verses, that word begins both of those verses. And then at the end of that, the Selah, to stop and think about what was just said. And then, through 17, David promises devotion. So you've got David needs deliverance in 1 through 5. David promises devotion in 14 through 17, where he's going to talk about what all these other guys, the enemies, are going to do. But in contrast to that, what he's going to do is he's going to praise God, and he's going to let everybody know, what's going on, how that he's helped him, and that type of thing. And in the middle of all of that is really 3 points of how he wants God to deliver him to get him to the point of devotion. And they all start with D. Verses 6 through 8 is derision, which is not a word we use often, but I got it from the text, or at least the ESV version of the text, which basically means scoffing. They're laughing at God, thinking, who's going to hear me? But God's going to scoff back at them. And then verses 9 through 10 is defense, and verses 11 through 13 is discipline. So how does he want God to deliver him? He wants him to provide derision, not listening to these guys, but instead God scoffing at what they say. He can brush that off easily. He's wanting to defend him. He's wanting God to defend him. And verses 9 and 10, again, we've seen it before, but oh God, you are my fortress, triumphing over my enemies. So defend me as a fortress would, and allow me to have the victory. And then discipline, verses 11 through 13. It's interesting, even in this imprecatory section of this, he's not asking God to destroy or kill his enemies, but in fact, he tells them not to kill them, so that everybody would know that God had delivered David, and they would realize that there's problems when you go against the Lord and his anointed. So derision, defense, and discipline, 6 through 8, 9 through 10, 11 through 13. That section in the middle is what he wants God to do, and that's what's going to take him from needing deliverance to the point of devotion to God, verses 14 through 17. So let me, while you're doing that, you got it?
Yeah, finally.
Okay.
There we go.
And he's back.
And I'm back. I'm sure you heard all kinds of craziness in the background, me going,
well, I was just trying to talk and I was just trying to talk and cover up the time that you were involved in that. But he starts off with this idea of deliverance in these first 5 verses, literally again saying, deliver me from my enemies, protect me from those who rise against me, deliver me from those who work evil, save me from bloodthirsty men. So he needs God, wants God, is asking God to deliver him. And obviously, it's a life-threatening situation, and that's why he needs God's deliverance, because they lie and wait from fierce men, stir up strife against me, no transgression or sin of mine, O Lord, no fault of mine, they run and make ready. Awake, come to meet me and see, you Lord God of hosts and God of Israel. Rouse yourself to punish all the wicked. Spare none of those who treacherously plot evil. So we've talked about this before, but when David is guilty of sin and he knows what's happening to him, what's going on negative in his life is because of his sin, he's okay with just saying, I deserve to be punished. But he says very clearly that it's not anything that I've done wrong, verses 3 and 4. It's not, I haven't earned this, I haven't deserved. I'm just sitting there eating supper and Saul throws a spear at me, and I've heard of bad in-law relationships, but this is about as bad as it gets, and but I need your intervention. I need you to take care of me, and you're the only one really that can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really interesting situation, and just to kind of bring this back to our day and age, in our own lives. The reality is that we can have the same thing happen to us. Maybe not a spear thrown at us, right situation, maybe a fork or a ball or something. But some people allow themselves to really grow in an anger and a hatred for you. And why that is could be for a number of different reasons. I don't know. But you don't know it until it actually happens. And so should Saul have felt this way about David? The reality is no, he shouldn't have felt that way about David, but he did. And so there were things that were driving that, from his mistakes, and God ultimately, not sticking with Saul because of Saul's mistakes. David is the new guy that's going to take that throne. David has a great relationship with his son. And so David has, there are things that are in David's favor. And for some reason during this whole process that has not happened overnight, Saul has a particular view of David that's been growing and growing and growing until, boom, he explodes. And there are situations that, all of us can go through that we will either see that happen towards somebody else, it may happen to us, or if you're not careful, you can be the Saul in this situation and do that. And so it's very important for us to consider where we are in our own thoughts, where others are in their own thoughts, and to be able to, try to maneuver this. These are very real emotions that are occurring here over real life events. And so for us to look back at Saul and say, oh, this is a terrible person, and just really, rage on this guy, we got to understand we can do the same thing. In all of the different stories of the text, they are no different than we are. They're not make-believe characters. They're real people with real problems, with real life situations, real emotions. And his got the best of him and ultimately drove him, the direction that he went. And so now David is, we've talked about this before. David is feeling a certain way because now his world is essentially turned upside down and he's hated, and he's sitting there going, what in the world is going on? And so it just kind of launches from there. But just to know this is real life stuff that can still happen today, I think is a big deal.
Yep. And oftentimes, those are this is jumping out of Psalms for a minute, but, I taught Joshua 22 the other day, Sunday, and one of the things we pointed out was the fact it almost seems like Joshua 22 doesn't belong in Joshua, because it's all about, these conquests and battles and, overtaking the enemies. And then there's the dividing of the land after, they've conquered all of it. And then all of a sudden there's this story about a misunderstanding that almost led to a civil war and how they worked that out. And it almost doesn't seem like it fit, but sometimes like they had defeated all of the external enemies, they thought, and sometimes that's when our biggest enemy comes from within us. When we make, as they did, improper assumptions or judgments about each other, and when they base it on hearsay, when they, are unwilling to go and talk to the people and offer mercy and grace and forgiveness, it really does fit in Joshua, because you're dealing with the enemies that could help destroy God's people if they allowed it. And the greatest of that, God's going to let them defeat every enemy. The only thing that could possibly overtake them was themselves if they turned away from God and turned against each other. And of course, that was ultimately the biggest problem that David had, was these internal enemies of Saul and then later on Absalom. And the whole time you're sitting there wondering, what? Well, in a time where, they were the dominant power and defeating all the external enemies, how could this happen? And, we let our guard down and don't treat each other the right way. And like you said, it's a real thing. It happened, 1000 BC in the life of David in royal dining halls, and it happens in 2025 AD whenever we take each other for granted and don't treat each other the way we should.
Well, in Joshua 22, and I don't know if I've had this conversation with you or not. I won't go into it all now, but Joshua 22 is such a great example of how things should be dealt with.
Yes. They finally got it right.
Yeah, and there's only one reason that they did, and it's because they did what they were supposed to do. So if you're thinking about, why you have a majority on, I guess it would be the west side. I think I haven't gone through, and I can't remember the west side of
West
the
side.
Jordan, where you have a majority, and they're looking on the east side of the Jordan, going, these guys are building something to somebody and something they should not. And the reason why they were taking over the land and they were going back into Deuteronomy chapter 7, Moses told them, you destroy everything. Don't take their sons, don't take their daughters, don't give your sons, don't give your daughters. And here's why, because they will lead your sons and daughters away from me because of idolatry, right? And so now we have the situation where these guys are over here, they're building this. Well, it has to be for that. So they automatically made this assumption and began feeling a certain way. Saul's doing the same thing. And so finally they're like, well, let's go talk to them and see what's going on. And they did, and ultimately it was like, oh, okay, that's not what we thought it was at all. And these over on the east of the Jordan are like, we want to do this chapter 22 of Joshua 27 and 28, that this will be a witness between us. This is to remember what's happening between all of us and what we've done and everything. So, in Saul and David's case, if there would have been some intervention there, if there would have been some type of communication going on, maybe the spear doesn't get thrown. Maybe David's not sleeping in caves, but we don't have this story anymore. But Saul sat on it. He sat on it and it grew. And Corey, I don't know about you, man, but there are sometimes I'm that way. I just sit on it and it grows into something it should never be. And that's my fault. And this was Saul's fault. And for anybody else out there who's listening, it's your fault because you're sitting on it because you're choosing to sit on it, instead of just going and talking about it. That's why Matthew 18 is so important. That's why, the whole concept of fellowship is important. That's why church discipline is important, because it's about getting everything out because you're not designed to hold it in, and being able to deal with things in the right type of way. But instead here with Saul, we've got a lot of animosity and jealousy and pride and everything else going on. And it's not, I don't know, this is maybe a topic of conversation, but I don't know that it's because of who David is going to be, but it certainly is because of who David now is in Saul's eyes. He's a man that he hates.
Yep. That's exactly right. And then you start in verse 6 of how he describes that. So again, the way I've got it broken down, 6 through 13 is what he wants God to do. So 6 through 8 is derision. Every evening they come back howling like dogs and prowling about the city. There they are, bellowing with their mouths, with swords in their lips. For who, they think, will hear us? But you, O Lord, laugh at them. You hold all the nations in derision. So not only are they a threat to me, but they're a threat to everyone. They're walking around the city causing problems. And again, instead of going to the person, they're going around everywhere else and harming with the things that they say. And it's almost as if they're taunting God. Who's going to hear us? Who's going to know about why we're doing this and why that it's bad? But you, O Lord, God is the one that hears them, and so you laugh at them, hold all the nations in derision, and it, reminds you of back earlier in Psalm 2 when he says the same thing, kind of, But that doesn't just include the nations, the Gentile nations, like he's talking about in Psalm 2 as much. It's also talking about Israel. God does hear and see what you do. You're descended from Abraham, but don't think God's not going to have the last laugh, even against Israel if you're not going to follow what he says.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, again, as we've noted every time, and maybe you said this while I was trying to fix my camera, but we look again at all these different me's and my's and gods and lords and you's and I's. And again, I don't know that we can stress enough the personal relationship that David has. The blessed man has a true relationship with God and talks to God about how he feels and what he's going through.
Right.
So, as you've separated this out, that's what we're seeing, just about in each one of these sections. And of course, as you have pointed out, again, he's looking at God. You're my fortress, verse 9. He's looking at his steadfast love. He's relying on the strength of God and not on his own strength. He understands, again, who the deliverer is. And that's why up front, deliver me, deliver me.
Yeah. And a great way to study this psalm or preach this psalm is just to look at what he calls God. In verse 1, he's my God. In verse 3, he is the Lord, that personal name, Yahweh. Then in verse 5, he's the Lord, but he's the God of hosts. He is the Elohim of the host, or the spiritual military might in heaven. Then, verse 5, he's the God of Israel. He's in charge of the nation of Israel. Again, he's Lord in verse 8. Verse 9, he's my fortress, which we did mention kind of in passing. Verse 13, he's the God that rules over Jacob, which is another way of saying that he's the God over Israel. And then, again, he's God, my fortress, in verse 17, but he's also my strength, and he's the God who shows steadfast love, which he mentions that idea of steadfast love in verse 17 and verse 16. Seemed like there was one more time. Yeah, verse 10. So all of this, again, is based on that relationship that you're talking about, steadfast love, or that covenant love that God has with those who will allow him to be their guide. It's not because I didn't do anything to deserve what these enemies are doing to me, but I also realize I hadn't done anything to deserve you being my fortress or my shield or my protector. Or it's the only reason you would is based on your covenant love, your covenant relationship that you have with me, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. And he's continually throughout many of these Psalms repeating himself, such as this right here, "Oh, my strength," right? This is not the first time we've seen that. I can't remember. I think it was Psalm 56. We saw that 3 different times, maybe 4 different times within Psalm 56. And it's alluded to in Psalm 57, which we looked at last week. Well, once again, here in verse 59, or in Psalm 59, we're seeing that same type of thing. Deliver, your strength, your fortress, your steadfast love. You have look in triumph on my enemies. So God is the victor. That's how he sees the enemies of David, the enemies of Israel. And he realizes, again, look here in verse 11, "O Lord, our shield." So, on a side
That's
note.
Adonai there.
Yeah.
That, "O Lord," is Adonai.
So on a side note here, Paul equally, and we brought up Paul in a few ways, but Paul equally sees God in this way. And in Ephesians chapter 6, we're told to put on the armor of God. Well, it's God's armor, it's God's sword, it's God's shield, it's God's helmet, it's God's breastplate, it's God's everything. Meaning that not only is he your protection, but he's what you can use for battle. And so, "O Lord, our shield, O Lord, our strength. Well, the entire armor of God is based on all of this stuff. And so just as Paul sees God in this way, David sees God in this way. And if we will turn to him and walk those steps, then of course victory, triumph is definitely on the verge. So So we looked at, I guess, all the way down to verse 8, right? And so now we're at verse 9. Is that right, Corey?
Yeah, and we kind of touched on that already, but it's the idea of defense here in verse 9 and 10. Again, the strength word there is the word for refuge. In fact, a lot of translations, that's what it is, oh, my refuge. You're the one that protect, but it's that parallel idea of my fortress. God is the one that I can hide in. I'm hiding in a cave. I'm hiding in, with the Philistine, whatever, as he's being pursued. But really, my protection is not these walls around me or these caves and mountains around me. It's God that is my protection. And again, it's because of His steadfast love that I will be protected. I'll be defended against my enemies, and they will not be victorious. But I will be the one that will be able to look at them in victory because of what God has done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to go through here and not keyword these, but highlight these different words that, let's just do these in orange here, kind of describing all these different things that God is. Of course, that's how He looks.
Yeah, the theology of God in the book of Psalms is a really very cool study to do sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But as we mentioned from the very get-go, over 4,500 times, God is referenced when you count all the different names of God that's used, when you count the pronouns where the Lord is the antecedent of it, those kinds of things. It's all about drawing close to Him.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to me, maybe the most unique or interesting part about this entire psalm is the next section of 11 through 13 that I labeled discipline, because He doesn't want them destroyed. In fact, He very plainly says, kill them not. And we'll get into the reasons why and all that, but don't kill them. Well, twice David had the opportunity to kill Saul and did not do so, because how could I harm the Lord's anointed, the anointed of the Lord? So He doesn't want them killed, but He does want them disciplined and punished, yes, but also the discipline involves the people, because He says, lest my people forget, make them totter by your power and bring them down, O Lord, our shield.
Mm-hmm.
See, earlier, you are my strength, you are my fortress, but you're not just mine, you're ours. Remember earlier in the psalm, he said that they're seeking my life, but they're also a threat to everybody. They're going throughout the city with swords in their lips. So not only defend me, but defend all of Israel. Because again, if you're threatening the anointed of the Lord, which David refused to do with Saul, and Saul is doing when he's threatening David's life, then you're going against Israel, and you're going against the God of Israel. So for the sin of their mouths, the words of their lips, let them be trapped in their pride, for the cursing and lies that they utter. So you wonder what the swords in their lips was. We ought to draw a line from that down here to this: their pride, their words, the sins of their mouth, their cursing and lies. He says, consume them in wrath, consume them till they are no more, which just means stop them. Mm-hmm. Don't let them be victorious, in other words, so that they may know that God rules over Jacob, or rules over Israel, to the ends of the earth. And then again, another Selah. So the first Selah was there at this idea at the end of verse 5 that God is going to punish those who are doing evil. And then in verse 13 at the end of it, that they may know God rules. So again, a stop and pause. So the two times he's telling us to stop and think is, number one, the first time, verse 5, that God's going to punish evil, and number two, that God rules and reigns. And it's both really the same kind of idea. They're not in charge. And one of the things that we all have to understand and realize, God has to rule and reign in our lives. God is in control. God is going to be. Philippians 2, at the name of Jesus, every tongue confess, every knee will bow. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. But even if you are the king, there is a king that is over you, and that's the Lord God. And Saul forgot that. Saul was the one that was so humble. He's hiding among the luggage. He doesn't want to be anointed king. Goes to the point where he's so prideful, he thinks he can rule God's people the way he wants to. And we do the same thing. Again, modern day application. Elders, preachers, whatever, ministers, we sometimes forget, are we leading God's people the way God wants them to be led? Or are we thinking of it as my congregation, my people, my leadership, my direction? It's always got to be in the forefront that this is not my congregation, it's the Lord's. How does He want me to lead them towards Him? If I'm an elder, a minister, a preacher, whatever.
Which is it's very
because otherwise God will remind us of that in a harsh way.
Yeah. It's very easy to get in that mindset if you're not careful, especially if you are in a certain situation. Maybe you're, as a preacher, you're the only minister. Maybe you don't have a tradition, you don't have an eldership, and it can be very easy to get into that if you're not careful. But even if you are in a situation where maybe you're the pulpit minister, and some people look at that as like, that's the one spot and all the others, fall down the line. And then you have an eldership that equally, if you're not careful, you can have this head elder and then everybody else falls in line. That's not how this thing is set up.
No.
At all. And to put yourself into that position, whether it's on purpose or by accident, is not a good situation to be in. To remember, this is the Lord's church. This is His rules, His ways, His house. This is how things are supposed to be run. You and I did not put any of that into action. The church does not exist because of us. And we are, pawns in this whole thing that the Lord is using. And we have to understand, remember, we're blessed to be used in the way that we are because of the gifts that He has given us. Everything we're able to do and everything we have is a result of Him. So with that being understood, got to have things in a proper order and perspective and position so that we can remain humble in the state that we're in. But when you are given a position of authority or power or importance or leadership, especially within the Lord's church, it is so easy, because Saul is a great example of what happens when you let that go to your head. And again, real life instance, real life person, this can happen to anybody. He's not special in any way, shape, or form to that regard. So, this really is about the humility to bring them down. So when we think about, again, the Apostle Paul is throughout his ministry, very important. And he was brought to a point where he was even taken up and he could see the third heavens or paradise. And he couldn't talk about the things that he had learned. Well, whenever he was being brought into this comparison in 2 Corinthians, something that he wasn't wanting to be in, he's going into, well, these guys who you're talking about haven't done near what I have. Here's what's going on here. Well, then he was given the thorn in the flesh for the purpose that he might be brought down, that he might be humbled, that he might remain in that humble state, because it would have been so easy for Paul to do the same thing that Saul did. but he didn't. He remembered that everybody had a purpose, all that kind of stuff. So this really is bring them down, humble them. Don't destroy them, don't kill them, but bring them down. Help them to understand where they are and who they are and what they are. And not just
and all
for
the
them.
other people.
Yeah. So, as we continue on in verse 14, each evening they come back howling like dogs and prowling about the city. They wander about for food and growl if they do not get their fill. So they're never satisfied. And we've had this type of thing talked about. I believe it was in Psalm 57 where it discussed the sharp teeth and the lion and all of that kind of stuff. And so this, they're never filled with what they're striving to do. But I will sing of your strength. There's our word again. I will sing aloud of your steadfast love. We've seen that phrase again in the morning. For you have been to me a fortress, a refuge in the day of my distress. O my strength, I will sing praises to you, for you, O God, are my fortress, the God who shows me steadfast love. So we have this these repetitive words that he is continuing to use, and there's several more that I have not highlighted here, but he's called him his fortress. He's called him his strength there in verse 8 and 9. So he really is seeing this is who God is. And again, no matter what you can do to me, I'm going to walk with the deliverer who he's praying to.
Yeah, and the contrast there in verses 15 and 16, all they're concerned about is themselves, the God of their belly, we might say, and they're complaining if they don't get what they want. But here's what's going to happen. But on the other hand, I'm praising God. I'm singing of what he's done for me and what he can do for others. I'm worshiping him. I'm dedicated, devoted to letting everyone know. It's, again, a whole different mindset between the psalmist, in this case David, and those that don't have that same kind of attitude of, everything is about God, good, bad, ugly, whatever I'm going through, I'm focusing on God. Or am I focusing solely on self? It really is, again, those key concepts we talked about at the beginning, God, the psalmist, the enemies of God or the enemies of his people, however it's used, the righteous or wicked paths, and then heart. 149 times in 150 chapters. Even though it's not used here, you can see still, though, it's a matter of the heart. It's about what is your priority and what matters to you. Is it self and serving self, or is it serving God and being devoted to him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we begin the psalm itself with a prayer to God, and he's praying for deliverance, salvation, protection, and we find those words being used right here for those who are coming up again. And of course, this bloodthirsty, maybe that's a direct connection to what we're reading down in this section right here. But then we end with this concept of praise. I will sing aloud. And now he's not only praying for these things, but now he's singing because of these things. Because God is strength, he's fortress. Again, he's the one who, and maybe this is important, the God who shows me steadfast love. He's not just the God of steadfast love. He's the God who shows steadfast love. So not only when we look at God, we're not only seeing the characteristics of God, but we're able to see the characteristics of God in action. And that's a really cool thing that David demonstrates throughout all of this, is that he doesn't just have these things, he shows and he uses these things. He's not a God who can protect you. He's a God who will protect you. He's not a God who can love you. He's a God who will love you. And so he's an active God. Again, like we said before, God did not make the world and leave. He made the world, and then he lived in the world, and he's always been with us in the world. So for anybody who thinks that God has just been gone, really need to open your eyes, because God has been with the people since the beginning of time in one way or another, right? So God is with the people, and we find all those different words. You know, Jesus is leading out of the wilderness. Jesus is here. The Holy Spirit is leading us. God is, you know, and I mean, it's all throughout the text. God is truly involved with his creation. And that's just another huge thing that separates the God of heaven from every God of this world.
Yeah, and if you go back to 1 Samuel 19, what's interesting about this, he's praying to God to help him. And there's lots of times we can look in the text where God does some miraculous thing or whatever. But if you go down to verse 11, whenever these people had been sent by Saul to watch him that he might kill him, but Michal, David's wife, told him, if you don't escape, tomorrow you'll be killed, which it seems as if David was willing to, after Saul threw a spear at him, he was willing to go to bed and say, well, okay. But Michael's the one that had the good sense. Like a lot of times our wives are the ones that has good sense. It says, danger, Will Robinson. So verse 12, starting, she lets him down through the window, and David got away. And then she took a mirror, it seems like, of some sort, and put it on the bed and put some hair from a goat all around it to make it look like, covered it up in clothes, fixed a dummy in the bed, kind of like Ferris Bueller did, you know, puts a dummy in the bed. So, you know, Saul gets word that he's sick, and he sends messengers, and they go in, and they're thinking that he's laying in bed. Well, that gives him time to escape. But anyway, my point is that God didn't like reach down his hand and cause a chasm between him and Saul, you know, something of that nature. He used Michal to provide. And the point is that sometimes God does intervene in the lives of men. Sometimes he uses other people to accomplish his purposes. And so another, I think, important lesson to get out of this is to understand that and see God's hand involved in the people that he puts in our lives that are helping us. We pray for protection, or we pray for help or whatever. And, you know, I'm struggling, and I'm praying to God, I need encouragement. I want you to help me. Meanwhile, Garrett Bernithi has called me 4 times and texted me 3 times in the last 2 weeks, wanting me to go out and eat lunch with him, and I don't have time for it because I'm too depressed. Well, you know, it's kind of like the old joke of the flood water rising, and the guy's up on his roof, and this boat comes by and says, you better get in the boat and go with us. And he says, nope. He said, I'm staying here. I pray to God he's going to protect me. And the water gets all the way up to the roof line, and another boat comes by and says, come on, get in the boat and go with us. He said, nope, I pray to God and he's going to protect me. And then the water line's all the way up to, he's sitting on top of the chimney, and a helicopter flies over and stop, and they holler down and say, climb up this rope ladder. He said, nope, I prayed to God. Well, anyway, the waters keep rising. The guy drowns. He goes to heaven. As soon as he gets there, he walks up to God and says, what? I put my faith and trust in you that you would save me. And God said, I sent 2 boats and a helicopter. What else do you want me to do? You know, so at some point we've got to recognize maybe God's using Garrett Bernithi to go out to lunch with me, to encourage me, to provide what I'm asking him for, you know. And he uses Michal in this situation. He can use us to bless others if we allow him to, and he'll use others to bless us if we'll allow him to as well. But sometimes, like you said a while ago, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to, you know, whatever. There's a reason he put us in a community and told us to share with each other what's going on in our lives and share our lives with each other so we would have that help that we need.
Yeah.
But
well, and to your point, you know, there's kind of 2 sides of things with, you know, people who are praying for help. like you said, in one instance, you've got all kinds of people who are willing to help and you aren't willing to take it. In another instance, you've got everybody's, I'm asking God, give me a sign, where you're so engulfed in wanting to see something happen that you miss out everything that actually is happening. So there's, a lot to be said about, how God is working in your life, and you've got to be actively moving, if you will, actively looking, actively being aware of your situation and your life so that you can recognize and think about, what all is actually going on and who is actually showing, love and care and compassion for me during my life. But, when we put ourselves into our box, if you will, I've talked about that book that's about life and leadership and everything by the, I'll post it. I can't remember the actual title of the book, but it's a leadership book, and it's all about how you can put yourself in a box. And when you put yourself in a box, you basically box everybody else out. And it's about a box of emotion and how you begin to create situations and circumstances that are not real. And, just like your illustration, praying to God for help, and he's sending help from every direction, but you're too blinded to be able to see it. And, I think that Saul was in that position and David was not. Saul was in a position where pride was his box, and David was in a position that, he was physically being threatened and on the verge of peril and death, yet the only direction he could look was up. So, making sure that we have the right perception and perspective of life and spirituality and God and that involvement is very important.
Yeah, because the name of that book you're thinking of is Leadership and Self-Deception.
Yes.
And that's what we do, is we deceive ourselves in thinking the wrong way.
Yeah, and I know that neither one of us brought that book, but I'm going to put it in show notes. It is not a spiritual book, but man, it's a good one. It is a good one.
That was a Bob Turner required reading in his leadership class.
Well, I actually, one of our friends several years ago had read it, and she gave it to my wife, and she was reading it before she'd go to bed, and there were several instances where she was reading, she would start laughing because she was like, "You and I do this," and it was really funny. And so I was like, all right, it got to the point where like, okay, I really have to read this book. And I did. And it is one of the favorite books that I have in my library because it just really is, it's true. And it just shows how you can deceive yourself if you don't do, basically, there's some spiritual premise to it. If you go against what you know is right, then you put yourself in a box because you've deceived yourself into doing something that's not. That's a deep thought, man. And so it's really good. Highly, highly recommend that book. So there's your dual recommendation for this episode.
Yep. So why does Santa come down the chimney on Christmas Eve?
Oh, why, Corey?
Because it suits him. Why did the Christmas tree go to the barber?
Why?
It needed to be trimmed.
Oh.
What do Christmas trees do before they go out on the town?
What do they do?
They spruce themselves up.
Folks, this is how
what
we're
do you call
our
it?
Episode.
What do you call an obnoxious reindeer?
What?
Rude off.
Rude off. That's perfect.
I'll be here all week.
Well, we've ended on a high note here.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, man.
To you.
Here you've heard it, folks. The song, we haven't had a dance, but some jokes. And so you got a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's kind of like those, what were they, what's the old time shows that, like Bing Crosby, what do they call those?
Talking about the like the live shows that they did, or
where they would it's kind of like a variety show, but there was another word for it. I can't think of what it is right now. But anyway, you get a little bit of everything: a little Bible, a little singing, a little joke, a little cooking. Anyway.
I don't know what those are called. Looking it up here.
Well, next Thursday will be Christmas Day.
Yes.
So when you get to that point, after all the presents are unwrapped and the kids are playing and everyone's ready to kind of take a little nap or whatever, you can turn on Untied for the special Christmas episode. I don't know how special Christmas it's going to be, but what are we up to next? Psalm 60, Trial to Triumph, is the next one on the list, if we go to the next one on the list.
And that will be a good
Are we maybe taking next week off? I don't know.
No, we're going to move on as long as we can.
Okay. So we've got, I think our season's supposed to end at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
So we've got 3 Psalms and 2 weeks. So
never know what you're going to get, folks.
I'll let you figure that one out.
We'll figure that out, yeah. But, so special Christmas episode next week. Maybe we'll do something fun. We may do a giveaway. I don't know. We'll think of something. But what do you think about this, Corey?
I'll wear my Tennessee Santa hat.
Well, there you go. That's an idea. So we have in talking about the, we're beginning to wrap up season 3, and so we'll obviously after the first, after the new year, probably take a little bit of a break, but then we'll start the next season 4, which will run into the Excel Still More Bible Workshop. And so, Corey, I don't know what you think about this, but doing a live show together. We'll have some time to do that at the O'Connor Resort. What do you think about that? Making this a live deal. We can interview our other speakers, a lot of other, we're going to have a lot of good guests, man, and can have some fun with that. So, plan to, if you're talking about Christmas gifts, there would be a great Christmas gift to gift somebody a registration and hotel stay to come to the Excel Still More Bible Workshop in January. That's January 21st to the 24th. We've got 10 excellent speakers: Dan Owen, Denny Petrillo, Corey Sawyers, Billy Clayball, Lori Boyd, Keith Harris, Rick Brumbach, who am I missing? Joe Wells,
Garrett
Steve
Bernithi.
Schinnerer. Yeah, I'm the low point in the whole thing, I think. But great people going to be there. O'Connor Resort and Convention Center in Oklahoma City. Book your room. If you do this before the 20th, so do it before Saturday, you can reap the benefits of booking then. It helps us because all of those rooms will be released on the 21st of this month. So be sure and check out all of that. And we would love to be able to see you then. I think my camera just messed up. What a excellent picture of me right there. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. Probably better they're looking at you anyway. So, but make sure and do that. Consider gifting that to somebody. It's going to be an excellent workshop. Again, January 21st to the 24th. Book your rooms by December 20th. And come stay with us. Do a study with us. You'll get a book with your registration. It will be a really good time together. Well, Corey, it's been great to visit with you and to study with you and to talk about all kinds of things with you. It's been a great show. And we're looking forward to seeing you next week. Special Christmas episode. Of course, we're wishing everybody a very Merry Christmas. And be safe through this holiday weekend, over this next week, because, of course, there's going to be a lot of travel and things going on. So until next time, we're grateful that you have joined us. We hope that you'll continue to walk with the Lord. And every day, continue to build your faith every single day. We hope that this podcast has blessed you. And until next time, stay untied.